Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. Continuing on the whole apocalyptic AK-esque, have your black rifle because things have become a little bit unhinged. I thought I'd cover the AK-100 series because that seems to be something that is kind of mystical to a lot of people. So first, what is the AK-100 series? It is a modernized AK-74M, is all it is. Most of them have a 90-degree gas block. They also have a different muzzle device, which is indicative of the AK-74 series rifles. And they usually came in 3 calibers. 7.62 by 39. That was the AK-101, or I believe. The AK-104 series, if you're going by Arsenal. It was the 5.45, and then the AK-106, which was or AK-105, depends on which nomenclature you go with, was the 5.56. Why did they do this? So in Russia, where Izhmash, which is the original company that makes Kalashnikov, they decided that they were going to modernize the AK for the modern market, and in doing so, they were looking at the market for defense, for national defense, specifically armies. And the 3 calibers that most people were asking for were those 3 calibers, not necessarily the 5.45. The Russians like the 5.45, and they're trying to spread it as a competitor to the 5.56. Now, in reality, having built an AK-74 to be exact, I learned a lot. And the first thing I learned was that you can actually take an AK-74 kit, change the bolt and the barrel out, and you've basically got a 5.56 AK. It is an AK. It is a 5.56 AK. The 100 series gives you all those benefits, but they add modular furniture also. So think of I'm trying to think of Magpul's furniture, the Zhukov stocks, something similar to that. But then they started looking at M4 stock adapters because, that makes a hell of a lot of sense because then you end up with a lot of M4 stocks that you can get and adjust it for whatever you need, and it fits the user a heck of a lot more and can be a heck of a lot cheaper. So military started looking at this design and an improvement that they were manufacturing in both the Malat Vepr plants and the Izhmash. In Russia, they are all one giant conglomerate now. So, if you were during the communist era, the AK was handed out to anybody that had any penchant towards hating the United States. And they would give you licensing, tooling, the whole bit. Here you go make it. And that's how the AK got prolific. Fast forward to now, in the last 10 to 20 years when they started inventing the AK-100 series for export, or marketing it more so, it was these calibers were already ingrained. The 7.62 by 39 was in use by a lot of countries already. The 5.56, if they were competing against NATO and they didn't want to change their caliber because they have stocks of the ammunition, they decided to make a 5.56 in the AK-100 series, and the 5.45 because the Russians are still trying to compete to show that their caliber is superior. Me personally, I can't tell the difference between a 5.45 and a 5.56, except for there is a slight recoil difference. And when I say that, there's less recoil with the 5.45. So that means an automatic fire would probably be less jumpy. That said, 5.56 doesn't shock you when you shoot it anyway. Why was I advocating for a 5.56 AK? Well, they're becoming more prolific, and here's why. After the Biden, it started with Trump, they were blocking steel case ammunition coming into the United States, and a lot of those Russian manufacturers of steel case, such as 7.62 by 39 and 5.45, basically went away. You were getting stocks of them still, but they're really getting more and more expensive. So enter what everybody has already have ARs in the United States, or a lot of people do, but they're curious about the AK, so why not market an AK in a 5.56? So Palmetto State Armory was one of the first to enter this fray, or try to. Actually, technically, I'm wrong there. It's Arsenal that was the first. Arsenal, because I have an AK-106, an SLR-106 FR, I think is what it is. Anyway, the one thing I'll tell you about 5.56 AKs to this day, because there's multiples now. Kalashnikov USA is releasing one, or has released it. Palmetto State Armory has theirs, but they have two different versions. One of them is the AK-105 series, I think is what they're calling it, or the 106. Again, it bounces between my recollection anyway. One that uses AR mags and one that uses traditional 5.56 AK mags. Then you have Zastava. Zastava's been in the market in the M90. I had one of those. I miss it. Anyway, long story short, I don't have it anymore. It took AR magazines. It was adapted for that. If you look at that now, they have that same rifle that would take standard pattern 5.56 AK mags. And Zastava's older metal mags may or may not work with some of the newer 5.56 rifles. Newer 5.56 rifles, especially ones that are coming out of Poland, so like WPP, Pioneer Arms, FB Rodham is still making some, and you can find them here and there. Here's why. In Poland, the barrel AK is a 5.56 AK, and it was designed that way to allow them to be a NATO ally. So they already have a very good track record with the gun and its components and its magazines. And if you try to get one of the newer AKs, including one of the Pioneer ones, one of the mags that tends to work consistently, and it's not going to break the bank, but they are a little more expensive than AR mags, quite a bit more actually, are FB Rodham mags. That you can get the ones, if you get them from the military, they're black and they have some metal reinforcements. If you get some of the newer military ones, though they're not, they're smoke gray, and they have no metal reinforcements, and they don't seem to need them. And I've been pretty manhandly with them in training classes. So I advocate for training all the time, and with the AK is no different because it's my home, what I consider my home rifle. It is the one I know the most about. So with the trade embargo with Steelcase and people having lots of ARs, enter the AK, the 5.56 AKs. And what I will tell you is this: they're the same basic principles that you have with the AR, with the AK. The only problem you're going to run into is magazine. They're not cheap, and they're not easy to find yet. As more and more come out, they'll be better. The other thing is that I've had to eat crow and say this, but the AK is not as modular. You cannot get the furniture sets that you want exactly that you can for an AR. And that lends to where you accessorize your gun to fit you, the user, is easier with an AR-15 than it is an AK. But maybe you don't need those accessories. I will tell you all the time, a good light on a gun is a very good plan, especially if you were going to use it at night as a defensive gun. The lasers are great if you have nods or night vision glasses, but they're also really expensive for those two pieces of hardware. So, are you really going to be one of those guys that's a commando at night? Let's be real. So the advantages of the 5.56 or the AK in general are they are more abuse prone. You can neglect them more. That's really the heart and soul of it, especially with modern 5.56 ammo. If you're not using Russian ammunition of any kind, that means it's non-corrosive. That means a 5.56 AK is even more beautiful because you don't have to worry about what a 5.45 AK would be if you were shooting 7 and 6, because it is corrosive. Okay? So you can use the ammunition you already stock for your AR in the AK, and it should digest it. I've always maintained, though, that if your battle rifle, if this is your rifle, your go-to rifle, it should be able to digest steel or brass. And I maintain that with all of my ARs and my AKs all the same. And to be honest, the only time I've ever had a bad problem with steel case was this last time when I took my daughter out shooting with a bunch of her friends, trying to get people into the 2A, and it was fun. We ran out of lots of ammo, and there was one round, I think, that was in that may have been kissed by some water, and there was some rust that probably rusted the rim out, and it left the case that was stuck in the chamber of the gun, and I had to take a ramrod and get it out. That's the only time I've ever had that ever happen, and I'm 99% sure of why it was the case. It was because I didn't store the ammo right. As far as accuracy, American NATO ammo is better than anything you'd get in Russian. There's always going to be more variants, but it'll do the job. And, if you're practicing and you're training a lot, steel case to me is still a decent price right now for the time being, and that makes it attractive to me because I like using it in my AKs too. I use 5.56 AKs interchangeably with my ARs. The only thing I notice is there is a weight differential with an AK. There always will be. The AK is going to be a little heavier. Mounting optics to an AR, 1,000 times easier than you would with an AK. Even with the modern sighting systems that you can get, the little adapters and all that other stuff, on an AR, it's really a flat top. You just put it on there, done. With an AK, you're going to need that bracket that attaches to the side rail, and that side rail is going to be what holds your optic. And they'll hold their zero, so it's not that. It's just a little more difficult, a little more awkward than it would be in an AR world. Same with furniture sets. I've never had an AK furniture set, an aftermarket one, that fit 100%, that you didn't have to, sand a little bit on or have to carve out a little bit because the plastic or the material it was made of was a little thicker or thinner in some places than it should be. Because AKs, while they're standard, they aren't always the standard you would want or need, or sometimes they're made above and beyond that. I'll never forget getting my NPAP, my M90 AK, which was the 5.56 AK I don't have anymore. When I put the furniture on it, getting the forend, I didn't realize that there was that much of a difference between a Yugoslavian forend and a standard AKM. And there is a huge difference. That's why you look when you buy your furniture. Let me save you the heartache. When you do that, you're still going to have to do some fitting. But the 5.56 AK is a very viable thing to think about, especially in the day and age where you need that one rifle, the one you can always count on. Like, share, subscribe, be great.